Okay, everyone, we are starting our next session, which won't last too long, but it promises to be extremely exciting. So, yeah, take your seats. It's going to be a lot of fun, intellectual and not only. So I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce our next speaker, Sampson, who is an artist and material culture researcher whose work uses film, photography, and writing to explore the relationships between bodies, memory, and garments, both in museums and archives and in our everyday life. She's a senior fellow in design at Northumbria University and was previously a curatorial fellow at the Costume Institute of the Metropolitan Museum of Art and professional fellow at UCA. Her book, Worn, Footwear, Attachment and the Effects of Wear, was published in Bloomsbury in 2020, and I'm absolutely proud and thrilled to say that it will be the translation, the Russian translation of the fantastic book, one of the best I have read in years, will be published in Russian language in 2023. So, I think news. We'll talk why wornness, imperfection, embodiment, and the radical power of the word.
Well, firstly, thank you for such a lovely introduction, and thank you for arranging the publication of Worn in Russian. You think you're closer? Yeah, sorry. And also thank you to the organisers. This has been a really, really exciting couple of days. Hello, I'm Ellen. I'm a practice-based researcher, which is to say, I've just realised I've taken radical out of my title. I was obviously feeling radical when I proposed this, and feeling less radical once I wrote it. Sorry. So, I'm Ellen. I'm a practice-based researcher, which is to say that I research both through writing and through making objects, images, and films, and sometimes performances. Broadly, my work takes a phenomenological and psychoanalytic approach to things we wear. So I'm interested both in the ways that, through use, garments become part of the body schema, to use another quantities term, but also how they become parts of our psychic or emotional selves. And in doing so, my work focuses on the material outcomes of these sensory and emotional entanglements, the marks of use and wear. So that the majority of my work is concerned in some way with imperfection, with damage, and with use. The place that is most evident is in my book Worn, which you just mentioned, which explores the power of imperfect garments, asking what, in the culture preoccupied by newness, and the fashion system largely predicated on it, is the value of worn clothes, and why do they have the power to affect us so deeply. The outcomes of embodied practice research, it was basically my doctoral research, and involved a combination of shoemaking, wearing, and performance. The book asks readers to reconsider the values of marks of wear at a time when fast fashion dominates many of our relationships with clothing. And broadly, I would say the book explores three themes: attachment, entanglement, and dress. How through wearing we develop attachment to our clothing, how those garments become vessels for both our agency and also our bodily matter, and finally, how the traces of that attachment, the marks of use and wear that are our clothes, affect us. Why worn garments are so prominent or powerful. So, this paper really stems from a series of conversations which follow the writing and then publication of Worn. First whilst I was at the Costume Institute with former conservator, Sarah Satiro, and former collections manager, because I both left, as a friend of. And then more recently, a couple of months ago, with Lord Bastruga and Aurélien Vandevrier in Belgium. And these conversations, I guess, questioned or asked me about my particular interest in worn garments, why I cared about them so much, why I thought they mattered. And perhaps in doing that, questioned my own subject position as someone who can afford to be interested in and engage with imperfection in a pleasurable way, and how that feeds into some larger questions about fashion, privilege, use, reuse. And I'm thinking there, about kind of current work going on about repair, but also things like Manuel Sharpie's work on patina in the middle classes in the 19th century. At the same time, there were a series of exhibitions last year and kind of media conversations in London around repair, including exhibitions like Eternally Yours at Somerset House, which I was part of. Now, my work really isn't about repair, and I think there's some really important and interesting work going on around it. People like Angela Maddock and Richard Harvey, for example. However, I was feeling slight unease or discomfort with some of the more mainstream narratives that were emerging around repair, particularly within the popular press. How perhaps this decontextualised fantasy of repair, or the idea that everything was repairable, and maybe particularly for me, the idea of repair as something entirely decorative, could very easily align with kind of fantasies of newness and perfection, with a sort of avoidance or refusal to deal with the traces and impacts really in the world. Which actually I think isn't what academic research on repair is doing, but perhaps what's happening in sort of broader kind of post-COVID kind of repair discussions. So, in that context, I guess about 5 years ago, at a 2018 symposium that was at FIT called Fashion Unravelled, I posed questions: why wornness? Why do worn things matter? Why should we, as researchers, as curators, as consumers, attend to damaged and imperfect things? And in the period since then, there's been a real resurgence of interest in damage and imperfection in fashion studies, which I guess builds on some earlier work by people like Amy Hay and Caroline Evans. I'm thinking in particular of work by Hilary, who's here, but also people like Becky Bide, who's at Leeds University in the UK, Rachel Caesar, who's at Abovyan University in Sydney. And so I guess in returning to those questions 5 years later, and in the context of the conversations I've been having, I've been thinking a lot about why wornness matters. Not just in the context of my own interest in perfection, but perhaps about what wornness can do. Why might it be useful for fashion studies? How could it be a tool, a lens, or a position through which to address some of our more complicated relationships with fashion? And I would say that this is very much an idea of paper. I'm trying to work some things out, so I guess I'm posing some questions to you because I'm trying to think about things and work out what this means for my own work at the moment, and what it means in terms of where I'm with my work is moving into. So, in English, at least, worn is an interesting word, both verb and adjective, with dual but intimate meanings. A garment is worn through putting it on and using it, and in doing so it becomes worn, altered for use. Taking the dual meanings of worn, so the linked bodily experience of wearing, and the material outcomes of wear as a starting point, this paper, in my thinking at the moment, frames wornness as a way of thinking about entanglement, materiality, and connectedness in fashion, so I'm really connected a bit with what Ilya was talking about yesterday, and also what Elizabeth was talking about before the break. So wornness is not in fact as imperfection, but instead it's a way of approaching the complex intersections of bodies, sensations, and things. So starting with that first definition of worn, the past tense of verb to wear, wornness is essentially a way of thinking about embodiment, the way we feel our clothes. And I'd say that specifically, wornness affords us a space to think about the sensory emotional experience of wear, not as something static or singular, but instead as an ongoing process, the garment's experience rather than object. So, drawing on the work of psychoanalyst Bolas, who wrote about transformational objects, maybe the object is a process rather than thing. And I previously used Bolas a bit to think about the way that clothing mediates fantasy and reality. So the way that kind of the transformational object can be kind of a way of projecting onto my desire. But here I'm really trying to think about that idea of process and hold on to that. The experience of the garment is something ongoing and in flux. There's a great body of literature on sensory and emotional experience of wear and the effects and atmospheres of dress, so clothing is feeling. For example, the work of Sarah John Kwan, which I think is wonderful, and the recent book, Essie Burrows, Lapella and Ilya Parkin's Fashion and Feeling. And I'd say this is embodied in sensory tone in fashion studies has really foregrounded the way that clothing is felt, the idea of wearing not simply as an act of dressing, but as the ongoing confluence and entanglement of people and things And importantly, the ways that the experience of the dressed body is a complex intersection of the sensory and emotional, or to put it in psychoanalytic terms, and to borrow from one which we love, Yerevan Winnicott, and his work on transitional objects, the meeting of internal and external experience. So, wornness is thus, I think, a way of thinking about the intimate and tactile relationships we have with the things we wear, the ways we become entangled with clothes we use. Lucia O'Reilly terms these confluences of people and garments, assemblages, borrowing up from other quantities I have ridiculous and social deleurs. And I quote here, the body assemblages are clusters and connections between a variety of material and immaterial elements, molecules, neurons, cells, but also ideas, signs, and cultural symbols. All these elements and their constantly moving relations impact on the effective potential of the body. Thus, wornness, I think, is useful in thinking about the intersection of embodied experience and materiality. So, thinking about clothing as experience, I wanted to return to that second definition of worn, the adjective, something used, damaged, and altered. The way that our embodied encounters with clothing, whether that's wearing, making, cleaning, storing, or repairing, or disposing of, leave traces. As I've previously written, clothing touches and holds us, containing our bodies and recording our gestures and interactions with the world. Though we may launder our clothes, our garments are progressively and cumulatively altered as the body, environment, and garment meet. These marks are records of ways clothing mediates our passage world, indexical records of wearer's gestures, of the performances of a life. So that I think the experience of clothing, the transposition of person into thing and thing into person, which takes place through wearing, which is inherent in that first definition of worn, is materialised and made visible in the second in scuffs and wrinkles and creases. In my own work, I think about how the power of the used garment is its capacity to embody experience, to make visible the tactile and social encounters of the body in the world, the ways that our clothes more directly than almost any other form of material culture embody histories that cannot be put into words. Centrally, one used clothes is at the peripheries of conventional understandings of fashion, which is so often concerned with newness and with the reinvention through acquisition of goods. Often, the more a garment is worn, the less it relates to the original ideal, the less fashionable and more bodily it becomes. Thus, I think worn garments have the potential to subvert conventional notions of glamour and desire by being appealing and powerful despite rather than because of their imperfections. And I guess, in thinking about this idea of glamour and desire, I've gone back to a paper I really like called Understanding Material Practices of Glamour by Nigel Thrift, in which Thrift explores glamour in the context of consumption and our attraction to it. And he's thinking about two definitions of glamour. In English, there's both glamour in terms of casting a spell, the old English use of glamour, and also glamour, as we know, often think about it in terms of film stars and attractiveness. And Thrift builds on Krakauer and Schivart's work on kind of the ideas of kind of surface splendour of modernism, to present glamour as a manifestation mechanism of contemporary capitalism, suggesting that certain surfaces and materials, or combinations of materials particularly, create desire, and through that a particular set of subject-object relations. And I guess I'm particularly interested in this in the context of the kind of smooth and almost filtered surfaces which we seem to be fashionable at the moment, things which we encounter, whether we encounter them, I guess, in person or on a screen, are almost blank or kind of impenetrable. And I think in contemporary designs, smooth surfaces often denote a kind of impenetrability or an immunity to pollution and decay. The smooth surface is a sort of protective layer which cannot easily be unravelled or infiltrated. I'm kind of quite interested in what design is doing with smoothness at the moment. So, drawing on thrift, I think I would suggest that fashions and perhaps our fixation on these unblemished surfaces, on smoothness, on shininess, on kind of perfection, is a kind of deflection or refusal. A refusal to engage with the idea of a garment that has been used, and perhaps more importantly, has been made, to acknowledge that an object is never fully separate from the hands it's passed through, or the spaces it's inhabited. So this is kind of like a materially inactive form of willful blindness, which positions clothes separate from the world that surrounds them. And I guess what I'm thinking about is that newness is a kind of mythology. So it's just a story we tell ourselves as a way of avoiding the complex entanglements which are inherent in our relationships with clothes. So I guess intending to wornness is perhaps a way of troubling or challenging the extent to which the material culture of fashion is dependent upon smooth and unblemished surfaces. And what wornness does, whether that's a focus on imperfection or a broader engagement with our sensory and material entanglements, is to ground us in the materiality of the garment. The garment is a thing rather than image, idea, or fantasy, although I would say this is also always both. Thus, wornness as an attention to materiality challenges our focus on perfection by making visible our entanglements with the world. And I think it's this entanglement which has really led me to think about what's useful for me in wornness. That it's a way of attending to these intersections of materiality and sensation. And I suppose what I'm suggesting is not so much that we should think about imperfection, well, obviously I think we should, but that instead we should think about and utilise methodologies that really draw out the entanglements between materiality and embodiment, that iteratively explore the constellations of relationships which manifest in our clothes. So that wornness as a focus on both the material and embodied experience of dress presents the garment as part of an interlinking web of sensation, emotion, and material, never fully separate from the world that surrounds it. So wornness is a way of tending to the hands and objects pass through, the bodies it interacts with, and the webs of connections and affordances which hold it. And I think if we think about wornness as that compound of the adjective and the verb, as a confluence of action and outcome, of materiality and sensation, then it's perhaps a particular kind of way of approaching or engaging with the postal beyond human. And I have my Paradise quote up here because I forgot all the third year running to apply for the students on the school, which was what I was meant to do yesterday. But so, of acknowledging and exploring the ways that nothing's truly new or separate, but instead always entangled, used, and made. And thus, I guess, I think that wornness does, for me, as the meeting of embodiment and materiality, is allow me, and perhaps us more generally, to think about connectedness. And I suppose what I'm beginning to think about in my own work is wornness as a tool rather than a particular category of objects. So that it's something I'm just beginning to think about in relation to my new work about stains and ambivalence. The first part of which is in the Fashion and Feeling book, and the more recent stuff, which is a film I'm currently working on, which I showed part of in Venice earlier this year. And what I'm trying to do is think about if wornness can be a way of approaching garments which allows us to explore both their porosity, or their kind of porousness, and their relationality, the connections they're made through and afford. So that wornness is more than material sensory experience, but instead as a way of interrogating the human and non-human relationships which are manifest in our clothes. And what I'm working towards, and I don't think I've got there yet, but it's an approach that kind of counters that exclusionary nature of perfection, and also kind of very rounded understandings of the body and object. And in doing so, maybe gives us the chance to think about different relationships with our clothes. Thank you.